It's one thing to face one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history and try to lead an unprecedented recovery effort. It's another to have to do it when the incoming president and his loyalists seem hell-bent on making that effort more difficult, including putting conditions on the money that will be required to rebuild. That's exactly what Governor Gavin Newsom and the state of California are up against right now. Just listen to what House Speaker Mike Johnson said just this morning on Meet the Press.
Are you and can you commit that California disaster relief won't have strings attached?
No, I won't commit that because we have a serious problem in California. Listen, there are natural disasters. I'm from Louisiana. We're prone to that. We understand how these things work. But then there's also human error. And when the state and local officials make foolish policy decisions that make the disaster exponentially worse, we need to factor that in.
Guess what happened in the wake of Hurricane Katrina? Lots of natural disaster assistance in a bipartisan fashion. But that's what California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing right now ahead of Donald Trump's return to office. I traveled to California this week to talk to him about all of it. One of the challenges seems to be that there are infrastructure issues that are far beyond the importance of rebuilding people's homes, which is, of course, front and center for every human being, every member of the community who's lost their home and lost their school. Do you not need, or are you not going to need a Katrina-level type of response that is rebuilding the waterways and the infrastructure in these communities to make sure it won't happen again?
We're going to absolutely need to do that. And it's interesting, as we do the individual home inspections, and I've been doing the damage assessment, I've walked with the damage assessment teams, actually with them as they walk through that process. Interestingly, in each and every case, they're determining what worked, what didn't work. And so a lot of those lessons learned are being incorporated in real time and ultimately be assessed in the after-action report, which we'll make public.
Even though you don't have an exact estimate, no one should expect you to. Tens of billions is what you said. You're going to need, of course, money from the federal government.
100%.
100% going to need that. And as you've seen, House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested additional aid might have to come from with certain conditions. Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso said he expects funding to have strings attached. Senator Tuberville even said California doesn't deserve anything, saying, quote, unless they show us they are going to make some changes. You have been here on the ground in communities for the last week. What is your reaction to the response from leaders in Washington?
Well, if that's leadership, I have a different definition. I imagine it would be universally felt here. It's I'm not meeting Democrats. I'm not meeting Republicans. I'm not meeting Californians. I'm meeting American citizens desperate in need. And what they need is empathy, care, compassion, understanding. They need support, not rhetoric, not strings attached. I mean, I met families who lost not only their home, but their business and their church, their sense of self, place, community. They had a Zoom the other night, and everyone broke down crying because all they wanted to do was see the faces of one another. And yet that's the face of leadership in the state, the United States of America, conditioning aid to the American people in need, politicizing this tragic moment. So I'll spare any more commentary on it, except to say I would encourage these people. They're human beings. They're parents. I respect that. Come out here. Visit with these folks. And let's have a conversation after that.
I think it's important for people to understand that this is not historically, traditionally how federal assistance happens. It's typically done with strong bipartisan support, rarely with conditions that are as limiting as what they're suggesting. What is that about? Is it because California is considered a blue state? Why?
It's familiar. You know, the president-elect said of the previous governor of California, I hate Jerry Brown. He said in 2018 he was going to withhold FEMA funding because of fundamental disagreements. So they transcend. He's done that in Puerto Rico. He's done it in other states. So it's a state of mind, and that's well established, and was part of what I think people understood when they reelected him. But we hope that's just rhetoric. There is no success, American success, without California's success. So we're all in this together. That's why I have an open hand, not a closed fist with the president-elect. I want him to come out here. I'm sincere about that.
If he came out here, there are some reports that he might be considering a trip, though you haven't heard about it, to come out here after inauguration.
I honestly have a deep confidence he'll come out, and we're anticipating he'll come out. And I think it's a very good thing. And we'll be very grateful and gracious when he comes out, and we look forward to working with him on this recovery.
What do you want him to see when he comes out here?
I want him to meet, I don't want him just to see the damage. I want him to meet with the community. I want him to see, and I also want him to understand the magnitude of what just has occurred in the United States of America. I want him to understand the magnitude of the need for support in his collaborative spirit. I want him to meet with the first responders, the 1,500+ that were on the line heroically in those first hours of this firefight, and hear specifically from them what actually occurred and how heroic they were, how heroic police and sheriff officers were, and the folks that were on the ground, how heroic their actions were, and how they saved lives, and how they should be celebrated, not attacked in terms of that initial response. I hope he has a chance to do all that.
In the meantime, he is part of this disinformation and misinformation push that is making it incredibly difficult for people like yourself and first responders on the ground to get accurate information out there to the people of California. I'm more interested from you in how damaging it is when you have somebody with that type of a platform who is next week going to be the president of the United States is injecting inaccurate information about the worst wildfires in American history.
Let me answer that by thanking President of the United States, Joe Biden, who within 36 hours supported a major disaster declaration by text. Within a few minutes later, committed 100. He could have just committed 75%, 90. He said 100% of all the costs for disaster recovery. That took the time to meet with first responders, was here on the ground. I want to thank President Joe Biden. And then I want to offer that as an example to the incoming president of presidential leadership, a president of the United States of America, being here for the American citizen. What's not, I think, helpful or beneficial is this string of consciousness, these wild-eyed fantasies that somehow the State Water Project, we have reservoirs that are at or near historic highs, full, completely full, that somehow there's a magical spigot in California, in Northern California, that just can be turned on, and all of a sudden there will be rain or water flowing everywhere. It's not helpful. It's damaging to the very foundation of the notion of what are facts, what are truths. And the fact of that asymmetry, that's profound and consequential, amplified by people like, let's be candid, Elon Musk and others. And that 1-2 punch is real. And it's not just about this fire. And as here occurred force winds of mis and disinformation that can divide a country on a myriad of issues. This is serious. And, you know, I get it. They want to take us. I get it. I'm not naive. I get the California derangement syndrome. I've been living with that for years and years. New scum. You know, the same 7th grade. I remember the guy on Baltimore Avenue that called me new scum. I was in 7th grade. I can handle that. We'll leave that aside. I understand what they're trying to do. I want to work with them. It's not about me. It's about people that we both represent. He represents and I represent. And I'm honored and proud to represent these folks. And I desperately plead with them. Come out here. Help us. And we will help you. You'll be elevated, Mr. President. At the end of the day, you'll be the one we all will go to and say, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for living up to the values of this country. Thank you for having the backs of these families and these kids. I met a kid the other day, literally was driving away. Their house was on fire in the Palisades, and the young daughter said, Daddy, did you get my bunny? And he said, I didn't get your bunny. I got 4 kids. That's what I hope that President of the United States, President Trump, has an opportunity to meet with that family.
Elon Musk is one of the tech leaders who is overseeing a platform where fact-checking is not a priority anymore. He's also pushing forward some of this disinformation through his own 200 million followers. He's not an elected official. He spent most of his adult life in California, a state that's suffering right now. How damaging is that?
Full disclosure, I've known Elon for 20 years.
Yeah.
I have been a huge supporter of Elon Musk. I have great pride in his entrepreneurial spirit and the investments, next level investments he's made in California. I don't know what happened. I don't. And it's become increasingly concerning and impactful, and you framed it extraordinarily well. And what he's attempting to do or currently doing is something that needs to be watched very closely by the American people. It's a very, as I say, sobering and serious moment. And it's bigger than Donald Trump as well. Elon knows what he's doing, and he knows how to do it. And,
you think he knows he's pushing inaccurate information?
I don't think.
You know.
Come on.
Why is he doing it then?
I'll leave that to more objective minds. But I've a lot of mutual friends and a lot of folks that don't know what the hell's happened either, and a lot of folks that are part of that train. And that's a hell of a train to be on. And you watch that space. Watch it. Watch what gets carved out in these reforms. Watch who gets what. This is the making of the next level of American oligarchy. American oligarchy. If we wanted to suggest we don't have it already, this will take it to a whole nother level. Watch this space. So I'm focused on the recovery. I'm focusing on lifting up the hearts and minds of this community. This morning they said, we feel helpless, Governor, but we're not hopeless. That's the spirit which I'd rather focus my attention.